Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the gallery exhibition, Precarious Habitats by Patrizia Ferreira. We are excited to have Patrizia here showcasing her work and showing her fibers work in Frankie G. Weems Gallery. So what I'll do is I'll introduce Patrizia and then the artist talk will begin. So Patrizia Ferreira received a bachelor's degree in textile design from the Institute of Industrial Design in Montevideo, Uruguay, and a Master of Fine Arts in Textile Design and Prints from Philadelphia University, now Thomas Jefferson University. She's an educator and artist working in Raleigh, North Carolina. Patrizia Ferreira is a fiber artist whose work incorporates thread, yarn, fabric, remnants found in heirloom fabrics, as well as a variety of repurposed materials. A special focus is given to plastics, where they're emblematic material in many of her pieces. Her pieces can be best described as sculptural embroidered paintings that defy the two dimensions. Her pieces are in great part influenced by her native country of Uruguay, as well as her immigrant experience in being a woman. Please help me welcome Patrizia Ferreira.
Thank you, Todd. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Meredith College, for just this incredible privilege to share my work. I created a presentation where I talk a little bit about my background and my practice and how I arrived at this visual language that you see in the exhibit next door. So I grew up in Uruguay. In my upbringing, textiles were an integral part of life. It was how we celebrated festivities. It was how we wore the nicest dresses, and things were passed on from one generation to another. There was all these materials that had been in the family for generations. I honestly don't know. They were tended and mended and revered, and some of those are with me today. And I learned to take care of them. I learned to remove stains. I learned to, wash them by hand, and they still come into the scene when in those very special occasions. So the one thing I like about this connection to fiber is this intimacy that cannot be replaced by anything else, and this sort of wisdom that I feel comes to me from my ancestors, and that from women particularly, and that I get to carry it on in my life and in my work. And I think that's why I choose fiber every day. The other thing that makes my work the way it is, I suppose, is that I yearn for my homeland, and I yearn for this place that is not there anymore. It's an invented homeland. I've been away for so long, and there are specific places I sort of miss. And the one thing I miss is this sense of history as a witness of time passing by, right? These structures that live in the city that, due to lack of resources, lack of money to put them in perfect shape, they're there like these ghosts, like reminding us of everything that has gone by. And they are so noble and so beautiful in the way they age and their cracked surfaces and the way nature intervenes them. So I feel like I kind of channel this presence in my work sometimes. And then, of course, the coast. I grew up by the coast. I grew up going to the coast. And I think whenever I think of a place to find solace or to feel part of the universe, it is by the sea. That's what I imagine. And it's this presence, this just enormous presence that makes me feel so small and makes me want to create. And I know the picture doesn't look like a very exuberant location, because it isn't. So the beaches in Uruguay are pretty austere. The sky can be gorgeous, but it's a cloudy day. But they are rather bare, and nature is rugged and uninviting at times. It's very shrubby and it's super windy. So that's why nature behaves like in that way. But I do enjoy this rustic aspect of it. And there is this liminal space between land and the sea that I feel I connect with in the way in its adaptability, in the way it's able to withstand the elements and shift and change as needed. So this is another important sort of reference for me. The thing that draws me to create, I suppose, is texture. So I look and document what I see that attracts me, but in the end, it's this close-up vision that has me want to recreate nature. It is texture, it is pattern that draws me in. So I began my career as a print designer. I got a degree in textile design for prints, and I went into the industry to design patterns for wall covering. And I did that for a while, and I enjoyed it. It was challenging. It was very technical, and there was a lot of creativity involved. But what I didn't at all expected is that I wasn't able to use my hands. I was in front of the screen 90% of the time, manipulating artwork, and I just couldn't believe how much I missed it. And so I started experimenting with different techniques. These are some of the techniques I teach nowadays, and these are all techniques I self-taught myself. And it was very intuitive. It was very much like, in a way, I connected with a self-taught artist, even though I knew textiles and I could teach myself all these things because it felt natural. But I had not received a formal education in any of these techniques. And the things I was making back then were objects. I was making wearables. I was making functional things, because in my mind as a designer, that's what I was trained to do. I wasn't trained to do art. I was trained to do an object. And so I kept doing this. And there was a moment, though, when I felt compelled to do something that had a deeper meaning. And I think what did it for me was these images that would just constantly be bombarded at us. And I felt this angst and this desire to do something, and this impotence just felt like there was nothing I could do, right? We've all seen these images and they're nothing new. But I sort of feel like I was collecting articles that documented this damage. And what I started to do before I even did anything was I started to recycle. I started to collect materials that were in my household that I didn't want to discard, without knowing exactly how I was going to employ them and what I was going to make. I didn't know. And I go to the beach a lot when I go to Uruguay. And so I was collecting marine debris, and it was all very intuitive. And then I went into the studio and started like stitching, because this is how I create. Like, I use stitches. I never employ glue. I never employ machine. Everything is done by hand, and in a way comes into the work as a form of collage. It's very much like an assemblage. And as the practice has evolved, I am classifying. Very much organized and receiving donations. So I now have like a full-on practice where I use disposable materials, and everything sort of lives in its own bucket, by color, by type. And that's how I get to incorporate it into the work. The work that I do now, I try as hard as I can to sort of work in a circle, in a perfect circle, in a spiral at best. at minimum, where I use the leftovers of one piece to make the next one, or everything that I dispose of as I'm making little bits of thread, little bits of fabric, everything gets reutilized. So I feel that at this point in my work, I am leading my practice by certain values. And so one of them is I apply the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. And I think I was doing this all along. I didn't know I was doing it. And then the other thing that I do is that I sort of let an object tell me what to do with it. And so as I scavenge and I salvage materials, sometimes from the ground, wherever, in my house, but elsewhere, I then intervene them, I deconstruct them in a way, and then I go in and construct them again. And in this construction, there is this loving repairing and loving intervention where I feel that I leave a mark and the piece gives back to me in the way of the way it appears, the way it. So I feel like I'm connected to something higher as I do this. As I work, everything starts with an image. Everything starts with a visual. My eyes are sort of the starting point, and nature is where I begin. But then my hands are my second set of eyes, and so the tactility of the material really leads me to the next step. But because the work I do is so tedious and laborious, I do need to sort of document the evolution in some way. I sketch different stages of the process, and I kind of sometimes create sketches that visualize the piece at its very end, so that I keep track of where I'm trying to go. The start of my artistic career is extremely short. I started in 2019, making this very, very tight, very, very stitched all the way from one end to the other, not a single little bit left without stitches. And the pieces were always hard-edged and mounted. And I mostly use textile materials. But as I started to experiment, I dared to try to stitch with plastic and with other unusual materials like fishing line and rope and different things. But everything sort of lived in this very, very tight environment, and they looked more like illustrations than very different from the work I do now. But I just want to show you sort of the progression. This was an important moment for me. Last year, I received a residency. I did a residency at the Amante Arts and Culture Center, and I had the opportunity to dedicate myself to develop a body of work for 3 months and then exhibit my work in a solo show at the end of the residency. And this was the first time I had the opportunity to really sort of develop a theme. And so the fruits of this, I titled it "In Search of the Lost Paradise." And in these pieces, which are kind of like in larger scale pieces of the smaller ones that you saw at the beginning, I'm using references from the Bible and legends and sort of envisioning a world where paradise is lost, and we need to recreate or look for an enlarged version of paradise because it's actually not here anymore. And I, incorporated a lot of unusual materials into it. But the one piece I want to talk about is the most emblematic piece of that grouping is a crevice in the Garden of Eden, which came about. It's the merging of concepts. So it's this, which is what has me continuing to develop work, this dichotomy that I feel in me and that is present in the world, this this idea of the planet and the earth as this ever-abundant place full of life, and then these images and this knowledge that, on the other hand, we are destroying it, and this mortifying images that are being bombarded at us of pristine oceans with black oil spills in them, and just how do you reconcile the two? I, really sort of struggle, but then in the end, I feel that life will prevail. And so I put together these two sort of opposing concepts, and the work that came about, I called it A Crevice in the Garden of Eden, and in it there is this huge, like, sort of crack or crevice or abyss that is filled with this blackness that you could associate with maybe an oil spill or death or whatever you can think of, and it's really splitting the piece in half, and the piece is in the shape of a circle, which could come to symbolize the earth, but perhaps the womb of a woman, perhaps the red sort of teardrops that swirl around. Perhaps you could envision those as blood, the most essential drop of blood, which without it, there's no life, no human life. And maybe you can draw a parallelism and think of that blood cell as the ocean, as water. Without it, there's no life on Earth either. So I just find this merging of ideas and this overlayering of ideas to be the source of creativity for me, and in this moment in time that we're in. Since January of this year, I am fulfilling an artist residency at ArtSpace. And with this project, I guess I am setting some goals for myself. So one of them was to grow in scale. The other one is to make my pieces leave the canvas, leave that sort of hard-edged frame, and become more organic, more articulated, incorporating the idea of space, igniting space, and also inviting gravity to play a part in the piece. So the pieces are purposefully not mounted because I want this weight, this weight that is to be alive, to be a part of the piece itself, and to change them, because I can work on the table. Textile is a bidimensional material that only takes shape when you wrap it around something. So we are all dressed in fabric right now, and the material will change depending on the body shape that is underneath it, and the shadows and the way light reflects on it. So I am really thinking about these things, and thinking of sort of the ghost, this presence, like this old structures and how they change over time. And so thinking about time too, and how it alters surfaces. And so Precarious Habitats is the title I chose for the current body of work. It means to imply this precariousness that I feel is with us. We think of our life as something really stable, something really secure, something really safe, but truly we all live in a state of precariousness, in a constant state of precariousness. Things are constantly shifting. Our life is constantly shifting, and we really don't know from one minute to the next what's going to happen. And so I'm envisioning this idea of these spaces, these liminal spaces that exist in the planet, where borders are how nature responds to the elements. So the coastal areas, but when you think of a crack on the ground, the crack will be quickly filled by life, moss, flowers, ants. It doesn't stay the same for too long. And this crack is symbolic of time passing by. What I find interesting is that the term borders immediately has you thinking of frontiers and countries splitting their land and fights and immigration and migration. And it also has you thinking of all the things that separates us, not the things that unite us. I find that it's interesting how in nature is exactly the opposite true, right? So, so the work I'm making is meant to symbolize or emulate what nature does. The pieces are meant to sort of lay witness to something human. They're meant to be more like protections, like cloaks or shelters or places of refuge, not to divide. So I will start by describing this piece called Invasive Species. It was first created to be a flag for the 21C Durham Museum during the time that I had an exhibit there last year. And felt compelled to create a piece that could also respond to the elements and change as it was hung and it rained and the wind moved it and made it change. And so it got all tangled. The threads that were hanging got tangled. But the start of it was this image of mussels like entirely colonizing enormous swaths of rock in a coastal area that I visit in Uruguay, and they sort of embroider the rocks, and they're gorgeous. And then I juxtapose this idea, this visual with the visuals I've seen so many times, and we've all seen, of the Pacific Ocean garbage patch and these swirls of plastic, these gyres that just swirl around, and they're so disturbing, and it's so devastating to see this. And so I kind of created a piece that means to emulate the way nature colonizes surface, but I'm doing it with plastic, with repurposed plastic. And so in the end, it's meant to give you this feeling of this tension, this discomfort, perhaps. The piece, as I removed it from the flagpole, it now lives in different ways. It's very light, and it can be hung from many different places, and it's perforated, so the shadows add on to the piece, and it's sort of, they are just laying witness. The next piece I will talk about is Toxic Blooms, which began from this really disturbing images I saw of cyanobacteria completely invading the shores of Uruguay in 2019. This was because of the overflow of pesticides into the water streams after a flash flooding, which is unusual in Uruguay, but it happened, and it's happening more often. And the ocean literally turned fluorescent green. And it was really disturbing to see this color that is so artificial. And yet the images had me thinking that it was quite beautiful. And I thought, how awful that I'm finding these images to be so beautiful, and yet it is so very toxic and poisonous. And so I thought of nature and what nature does to defend itself. It's not us doing so much as we think, as nature. Nature has a protection system. Nature has a wisdom that we don't understand. And so I thought of poison ivy and how poison ivy will grow at the edges of forests. And it's there to protect the forests from further human intervention. This is true when in areas where there's a lot of construction. And I thought of how, you know, certain plants will grow in super dry areas and will develop thorns and different elements so that they can survive the different elements of different rodents or whatever that would come eat them, make it very unpleasant. And I used 2 pieces of fabric that were very, very tattered and old. One of them, a tablecloth that has been in my family for a very long time. I don't know how long. And it was so brittle. And then the other one, the piece at the bottom, is an undergarment from the early 20th century that I found in a flea market. And the 2 pieces together looked like a skeleton to me. They were so delicate. But what I did on top of them sort of juxtaposes these opposites of that have you wondering, you know, is it really a lovely garden, or is it prickly and uncomfortable and not what it's meant to be? So I was sewing fishing line and really hard materials on the piece, and in the end, I hung it like a shrine, and it's meaning to give you this sort of magic power, this sense of balance. Like we're trying to, I'm trying to find equilibrium. I need to marry these things because that's what nature does. So I'm doing what nature does. This is the piece called The Peel of Our Existence, which started off with this idea of the coast as a protection system. So erosion is a natural process. It's natural. It's what land does to protect itself. So in areas where there are large sand dunes, and you're building far away from the dunes, those houses behind the dunes are protected by the dunes. Whenever humans intervene to build roads and houses, the sand dunes get smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it must transform, it must do something. And so I was thinking of the sand by the edges of the water like skin, like a peel that we can rip. And I was thinking of the plants that grow in these areas where there is so much erosion. It's really interesting what nature does. It like the image in the center showcases this stems that literally will twist on themselves, and they look like rope, but they're not. They're a stem, and then they tangle on each other and they look like nets. So I used a repurposed rug that I found, and I felt that it sort of symbolized this skin that I was thinking of, skin of like the hide of an animal perhaps, but the hide of the earth. And so I cut it out and I made these huge gushes to let gravity like play this big role in the piece and intervene it. And then to hold it together, I started making ropes and nets and knotting the ropes to sort of unite it and patch it together in the way that I feel we need to do with ourselves or with the planet. So it's kind of like this analogy that I'm constantly playing in my head. And the last one I will talk about today came after a walk on the Walnut Creek Wetland Preserve. And these are sort of the vestiges of previous lives they were there. I took these photos, and the place is now a preserve. It's beautiful and it's been protected. But it wasn't in the past. We now know the value of wetlands, but it hasn't been too long that they've come to be protected. And so this was during a walk when the tide was low, And I was so moved by these sort of objects that were just laying there. They made me feel like I'm a woman of the future walking on land, as with when everything is gone. So I sort of recovered things as I started walking, and I started putting the things I brought from that walk. I collected a cloth hanger, a tire, several water bottles that were like totally squashed. I actually had to wash some of these things that were really filthy. And then I started like stitching them and uniting them with yarn, with rope, with fishing nets that I made. And it came about to be a sort of collaged assemblage of sorts that to me implies this sort of place of reverie of past lives and of our existence. It's called impermanence, and it's meant to symbolize just how, you know, our humanity, nothing is permanent. And I feel this need to repurpose things almost in the way as a spiritual calling of sorts. Thank you for listening. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We do have time for a few questions. If anyone would like to ask the artist anything.
Yeah.
So I've seen your work evolve, and I've seen it how it was unpacked a couple of years ago. And the way that it's evolved has been, you know, it's beautiful yet kind of a desolate sense, but prompting awareness in ways that we could try to find, you know, be more aware of the environment. Are you leaning towards more with installation work? Because it seems like you're going from wall to space.
Yeah, I do love what space does. I really enjoy this. It's very humbling, because I am not a sculptor, but I think I am going in that direction. Yeah, wanting to the calling of the space is definitely drawing me in. You're reading right.
Beautiful work.
Thank you, Fab. Okay.
A more simple question. When you're moving your pieces from place to place, do you try to arrange them the same way or hang them the same way every time? Or do you try to differentiate one location from another?
So kind of tied up with what Fab just said, like I like the idea of the pieces living in different, you know, having different presence every time. And so letting the space, you know, act upon them. Yeah. So it's not always the same. Okay.
I just have to comment. Your work is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
The detail is amazing, and I'm just curious how long it takes you on a piece. Like everything is so carefully considered, yet not, and it's just amazing. So how much time? Talk about the time that it takes to do the pieces.
I tend to work in many things at the same time. This is fairly recent, but yeah, I find that that's kind of how my creativity flows, because the pieces are all connected, and then they're connected for that reason, because one thing will give me an idea, and so I need space. The art space has been a blessing because I can spread out, but months. Yeah. I would say 3 months is kind of like a good time for me to get a bunch of stuff done. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your work with us. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
So I brought another question in mind. When do you know a piece to be done?
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, that's one of the tough things, I think, that we have to let them go. They need to go into the world. And so you have to, yeah, it's the best time when you're making, and I just want to do that. But you have to also be willing to,
Yeah.
So I don't know, I can't say exactly, but it's
Yeah.
one of these things where, okay, it's enough, enough already.
It probably changes when you're in the space. You probably have some preconceived notion of what it's supposed to look like in the studio. Does it transform a little or evolve when you're in the new space? And then, I mean, it seems like a challenge, but also welcoming and say, oh, I didn't expect that, but.
You mean like in a gallery space?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, it's very challenging, and it does change so much, and not always in ways that you're willing to embrace. I mean, there's this discomfort, but I think that the learnings are what's valuable more than the work itself for me. Yeah.
Have you ever sold one that you're like, oh, I wanted to do X to it and I didn't get to it, but I sold it anyway?
In the past, but I don't know. Yeah, like smaller pieces. I haven't yet experienced that. No, not yet. Not yet.
Is there any inside process or like thoughts that make you realize how do you find the beauty in chaos? Besides, observing nature from what I've heard.
I think age, time, realizing that, nothing is perfect, and it's this sort of realization that you feel as I don't know, I'm in my 50s and I feel like I'm made of so many broken pieces. So much I've had to leave behind, and it's that. Yeah.
I heard you talking earlier about how these pieces have evolved from show to show. You take them down and you work more on them. Are there any that are they all open to continuing evolution for you, or are there any where you're like, this one I'm not working on anymore? Yeah.
I think they're all open to possibilities of continuing transformation, as long as they're with me. Once they're gone, I let go, and I'm happy for the owner of the piece, and I hope they enjoy it. And I literally will let go. Like, I will not think of the piece anymore. But if they're with me, yeah, for sure. Yay.
You said that you kind of like go scavenger hunting for the materials that you use, but in some pieces you're really driven by like a color palette from what you observe from nature. So I wonder if what you are limited by whatever you collect in the sense of color, if it varies from piece to piece, or if you just know that you're gonna use a lot of green and then go searching for a lot of green stuff. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, no, it's totally random. I just scavenge and salvage, and I'm completely like open to anything and everything. I never know, but this is the beauty of textiles, that you get to sort of cover pieces, cloak them in the material, make like wrappings around them, and I get to change them, and that's where the creativity and that's what I like. I like this aspect of the ready-made,
I am working with some seniors right now. Some are graduating this semester, some next semester. This one is for all of the students in the room. I think of your previous life working for others and textile industry that you worked in, and then a big switch in risk of moving into being a practicing artist and finding your voice and discovering materials, what you wanted to say. Can you give them any words of advice of taking risks and just following their heart and head, or the journey that you took that maybe you could share some words of advice?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm wise enough, but that's a hard one. I think the best part of making is just sort of documenting the process, and it's taken me my whole life to understand the process. Probably because I didn't go to fine arts, I didn't study fine arts, and so the process was this like thing we did for a very short while in preparation for a collection, and so it was the most indulging moment of making was this research moment, but it was always so limited. But I would say indulge as much as you can in just researching, the process.
So this material, they talk to you or sometimes they talk to each other?
I love that question. Yeah, both, all the time. And I like to leave things out in the open so that I can see them. So it's not very tidy all the time. And I mean, it's organized, but in a some messy manner. And so I remember, because it's so easy to you forget what you have. And I like to find dialogues between objects and things and materials. Yeah.
Do you ever collaborate with environmentalists to like go pick up trash and then sometimes bring that trash and create more art?
Yeah, I'm starting. There was an image in the presentation of a huge box. There's an organization in Uruguay that works with sea turtles to educate the public about to protect them, and they do cleanups by the shore. And so, I brought this marine debris with me on the plane. Crazy, like I just shipped it, But I want to do that with organizations here in North Carolina. Because I know there are several that do cleanups and educate the public about the importance of protecting our oceans and the coast. And I think that is very nourishing to me. I want to do more of that.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming. Please enjoy the rest of the refreshments, and we'll be heading back into the gallery, and the artists can answer more additional questions. Thank you.